Hello and welcome to part 3 of my post-shoot workflow. In part 1, I talked about how I get the images from the card on the camera onto the computer and the folder and naming structure system that I use, as well as how I manage the files both during the editing process as well as after the editing process. In part 2, I talked about how I import the photos into Lightroom and the same process I use within my Lightroom catalog of how I keep everything organized. And now part 3, this is going to be how I go through the culling process of these particular photos. Now, this process is something that I've done the whole time, but I noticed a new tool in Lightroom, so we're going to give that a try. But before we do anything, there are some keyboard shortcuts that I think you should know. X flags that particular image as a rejected photo, i.e. one I'm not going to use, and P flags it as a picked photo or one that I want to keep. The reason you would use X and P in this case would be to easily be able to filter out the ones, yes, I want to continue the edit on these, versus the ones that you're like, eyes are closed, out of focus, bad framing, whatever that is. So before you use X and P, I would recommend using a feature called Auto Advance. So I'll show you how to set that up, but let me explain quickly what it is. If I go in here right now, and I'm just going to double click on this first image, and let's assume, give myself some space to work with. Let's assume I really like it, right? I'm going to click the letter P, and you can see it says flag as pick. If I click the letter X, flag as rejected or set as rejected. So if I just click P, now I've got to hit the right arrow and go to the next photo. Okay, well, maybe I don't like this one, right arrow, this one, right arrow. The easier way to do that, I'm just going to flag them all as picked for the time being. You can also remove flags. I can show you how to do that real quick. Select the image or images, right click, and then you can go into set flag, unflagged. And that takes anything you've done off. So if you're not sure where you are, you can always go back and kind of reset. What I would recommend, however, is when you're going to do this process, this flag as pick or set as rejected, I recommend going up into your file system or whatever this is, settings bar across the top, select photo, and this works the same on Windows as it does apparently on Mac because I've worked only on Windows before, and you're going to go down to this selector right here called Auto Advance and turn that on. So what it looks like when it's on, it's just a little check mark next to it. Same thing in Windows, there's a check mark next to it. Select Auto Advance, and what that will do is now if I really like this image and I click P, it'll automatically apply the flag and move to the next photo. So I can literally just live with my fingers on the X and the P keys and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I never have to touch the arrow keys as it progresses through if all I want to do is progress through. I will do multiple rounds of culling as I go through my images, and things that I look for are obviously, are the eyes clear? Are they bright? Is it in focus? Was the subject blinking? Are they standing upright? Is my framing good? All of those kinds of things matter to me when I go through culling images. However, I did notice there is a new tool called assisted culling. So I'm very curious about this. Subject focus, eye focus, and eyes open. So now it's saying there are 5 rejects, 7 rejects. Based on the information that I have selected, subject focus, eye focus, and eyes open, it looks like it's saying there are going to be 7 rejects and 154 selects. Well, that doesn't really help me right now because I have 161 images, and if the system is only going to take away 7 of them, it's not going to save me that much timing. I will be very curious to try this out in a catalog that is specific to something a little more fast-paced, like sports. So I'm not going to use the assisted part today. I'm just going to do this by hand. But essentially what I look for are the eyes in focus. Yes, everything looks good. Good hair light. Good that. That looks fine. I'll use my arrow keys and go across all 3 to see if my framing changed for the better. So like, for example, his head's up a little higher in that one, a little lower in that one. But this is the stuff that this is the stuff that photographers spend so much time on that nobody notices. I would say I'm definitely going to reject that middle one. So now it's between this one and that one. I like the light better on that one, so X. So now I've selected one. I'm on to the next stack of photos. That one looks fine. This is what photographers do all day, is they just go through and they say, of these 3 images, which they're 95% the same, I like the logo on the jersey in the first one. So then I'd hit X, X. And there we go. And that's it. I would go through all 161 images using this same culling process, X or P with auto advance. If you mess something up and you say, you know what, I didn't mean to reject that one, I actually want it, you just go back, hit P, it changes it from a reject to a flag. Now, I'll show you real quick when you're done. If I go back into, if I double click off of this, I'm still in the import tab, the library tab rather. I'm still in here. I want that to show. I'm still in the library tab. If I go to all photographs and I set my flag, if I set my flag to only show rejected images, here are the 4 that I've rejected. What I'll do is Command A or Control A, right click, and I will select Remove Photos, which is down here near the bottom. When this pops up, it gives you 3 options. You can remove from Lightroom, you can delete from your disk, or you can cancel. Obviously, cancel is not what we want to do here. My workflow is, if I have set it as a rejected photo, then I do not need the photo. I have chosen for it not to advance further in the editing process, which ultimately means it's a photo I'm never going to use. In writing, there's a phrase that says kill your babies, and obviously it's not meant that way, but what that is meant to say is don't keep something alive longer than it needs to be in writing and creative. For this is that for me. If I have set it as rejected, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm not going to use it anymore. I will go ahead and delete from disk. And now they're gone. So if I come back here to my desktop, you'll actually see that 4438 is my first image in Lightroom, right? If I open that up and I select that first image, 4438, and then it goes to 4441, which is my next image here in my Lightroom catalog. So when I delete them from disk, it moves them to the trash. It takes them out of that folder. Again, I'm never going to use them. Might as well go ahead and delete them. Yes, storage is cheap in terms of money, so why not keep everything? Because for me, at some point I may go back and choose to re-edit, or maybe I'll change my style or something like that. So I would love to have those available to me. However, I don't need all of the images that I took during the session. I only want the ones that I thought were good enough to edit down the road. You may have a different take on that, and that's perfectly fine. This is just my workflow. So that was my workflow on Lightroom culling and what I do with the images that I have decided to reject, which would obviously just be delete from disk. So that's the 3rd video in the series, Lightroom culling and photo management after the fact for rejected photos. In the next one, in number 4, we will talk about creating develop settings. We'll move into the develop tab or develop module on Lightroom Classic, and I will take you through my process on actually editing the photos that I have selected to edit that made it through the culling process. And you may see that I continue to cull as I go through. So we'll talk about that next time around.